Although on this channel we mostly talk about unsolved cases, in rare cases, if I find a case interesting enough, I will talk about it. To give a disclaimer before we get into this video, when I first found out about this case, I stopped watching true crime or anything related to it for a year and a half. No case has ever affected me this bad. It is terrible, gruesome, saddening, and just overall depressing. This is why it took so long for me to get this video out to you guys. Now, to get into the video. This case is known around the world, even having multiple movies based off of it, all titled similarly, 44 Days in Hell, based on the kidnapping and torturing of a young girl named Junko Furuta. Junko was a 17-year-old girl living with her parents and two brothers. She had a job at a plastic molding factory during which she would regularly attend after school. Even better, she secured a new job at an electronics realtor that planned to pay more, which she planned on working when she graduated high school. Unfortunately, she was never able to attend this job. At Yashio Minami High School, the school Junko attended, she was well known for her kind personality and attitude, with nobody disliking her at all. Even as a student, she was a good role model due to infrequent absences and good grades. She even had plans to become an idol singer when she was older. What makes this case even more sad was that when she was going home the night of the abduction, she was excited to see her favorite show's new episode, Tanbo, which you imagine she never saw. Junko would ride her bike home after school, where she met a boy named Hiroshi, who sometimes would ride their bikes home together. Unfortunately, Hiroshi was not the nice guy he portrayed himself to be. He had connections to the Japanese organized criminal organization, the Yakuza. He was simply doing this to build trust with Junko, which he did. The day of the abduction. Hiroshi was not alone, not even close. On the day of the abduction, Hiroshi instructed his friend Nobuharu to go and push Junko off of her bike when she was riding it back from her plastic molding job. Once Nobuharu did what Hiroshi instructed him, Hiroshi acted like he was conveniently around the area and happened to walk past Junko when she was pushed off. He offered to walk her home just in case anybody else came trying to do the same thing that Nobuharu did to her. Junko, having already built trust with Hiroshi, thinking this was a genuine offer from him, accepted his offer. He knew her route home and told her he wanted to take a different route to her house. Junko, having confidence with Hiroshi, quickly agreed. This is what would start the 44 days in hell that Junko was soon to endure. I would also like to add that Junko, after this, was never seen by her loved ones again. To give a little backstory on Hiroshi, he genuinely, in my opinion, was one of the most evil people I have ever read about, ever. Everybody was scared of him, ranging from workers, police, and even his parents. All of them were afraid of him due to his connections with the Yakuza. He wasn't necessarily a part of the Yakuza, but with his connections, he could tell them to do something and they would most likely do it for him. As well as riding bikes home sometimes, Hiroshi would attempt to start conversation with Junko, but due to how busy she was juggling work and school, she didn't have any time. And she did not know about his connections with the Yakuza like everybody else did. If she did, maybe she would have tried to talk to him. After taking the quote-unquote different route home that Hiroshi suggested they take, Junko soon realized that this was not the home route at all. And at the end of it, they ended up in an abandoned warehouse. Once she saw this, she knew she was in trouble. This was when Hiroshi told Junko that if she screamed or tried to run away, he would kill her, and that he had personal connections with the Yakuza. Junko was terrified of the Yakuza, and knowing Hiroshi had connections to them now, she wanted nothing to do with them. But it was too late. When Hiroshi told Junko that he would murder her if she screamed or tried to run away, as gruesome and sad as this sounds, in my opinion, that would have been giving mercy to her, knowing what they would do to her for the next 44 days. Disclaimer. From here on out, there will be graphic descriptions of events which can be hard to hear for some viewers. Out of all the cases I have researched before, like I said in the intro, this case was by far the most difficult. Hiroshi would have his way with Junko in the warehouse. After he did this, he was not done. Not even close. He called his friends, even Nobuharu from before, the one that pushed Junko off the bike, to come and to do the same that he did with her. Once all of his friends arrived at the warehouse, Hiroshi started to brag to them about the crime he just committed to Junko. One of the friends that arrived, Joe Ogura, requested to keep her trapped and invite more of his friends to come do the same thing to her that Hiroshi and all of them did. This, unfortunately, was not uncommon for them to do. This delinquent group did this to multiple women, and even just recently before this, kidnapped and assaulted another woman. The only difference is, they released her. Junko did not get that same treatment. After the incident at the warehouse, Hiroshi decided to take her to a park, where more of his friends, Minato, Ogura, and Watanabe, were waiting. There, the boys that I just listed, and others, had their way with her as well. After this, they smuggled her into a home that was owned by Minato's family. You're probably wondering, during all this, where were Junko Furuta's parents, and if they were suspicious about her disappearance. As any parent would be, they were suspicious about her disappearance. So they decided to call the police and report their daughter missing the next day. The boys knew that the parents would soon catch on and do this, and they made sure that the parents would not go looking for Furuta. They forced Junko to call her home and say that she had run away and was staying with a friend, which we all know was a lie. But her parents believed it, because she truly was an innocent girl who would do no wrong. Whenever Minato's parents, the owners of the house that Junko was in, were around, Junko Furuta was forced to pose as Minato's girlfriend. But eventually, the parents realized that something just wasn't right. Unfortunately, like I said before, everybody was scared of Hiroshi. Even every one of his friends' parents. The threat of the Yakuza coming after them was enough to keep them quiet. And for 44 days. The extent of Junko Furuta's life. Minato's parents lived in ignorance of the atrocious atrocities that were going on right upstairs. Over the course of these 44 days that Junko was held, she was assaulted over 400 times by Miyano and his friends, as well as random boys they found. While torturing her, they would insert iron bars, scissors, skewers, and fireworks into her, and even lit a light bulb into her, destroying her internal anatomy, which left her unable to defecate or even urinate properly. Most of the time, the boys were assaulting Junko, but in the rare off chance that them or nobody else was, it wasn't a break for her. She didn't get to eat normal food. She had to eat live cockroaches most of the time, and she had to, quote unquote, put on a show in front of them. She had to drink her own urine, and she had no water or any other things that a human should have to live. What pains me to know in this part is during all of this, she was alive and perfectly conscious. She knew what was going on. Everything was completely fine with her body, and she felt everything. She was hung from the ceiling and beaten with golf clubs, bamboo sticks, and iron rods. Her eyelids and genitals were burned with cigarettes, lighters, and hot wax. This torture, not for one day, never stopped. When I look into this case, something that really sticks with me is that all of this could have been prevented easily, matter of fact. The police were informed twice about Faruda's condition and how she was living. Both times they were informed, they failed to intervene. Like I said before, some of the boys who were invited over to have fun with Faruda were unaware of what was going on. So when a random boy was invited to have fun with her, he went home and told his brother about what was happening. The brother then decided to tell his parents, and the parents contacted the local police. When the police got to the house, they were informed that there was no girl inside. They didn't know what they were talking about. They've never seen a girl step foot inside that house. The police did no investigating. They did no searching. They took his words as fact, left, and didn't go back. In early December, because during the 44 days it was the coldest part of winter, Junko was able to sneak away from the captors for a decent amount of time. She found a phone and was able to call the local police, but before she could speak, Hiroshi found her. She was tortured heavily for doing this, more than she ever had before. They doused her legs with lighter fluid and sodomized her with a glass bottle that caused her to go into convulsions. And Junko would beg the boys to just kill her, but they didn't. Even when being sodomized and being put with lighter fluid on her legs, she still lived through all of that. The reason I brought up the fact before about how cold it was and in the middle of December is because each night they would force Junko to sleep outside. And by this point in December, the temperatures would be in the negatives. They forced her to stand in a freezer for periods of time. She was unrecognizable, and they said she smelled terrible. The boys got bored of her. They decided to go out and find another victim. They found a 19-year-old who was walking home from her job, almost the same as Junko, and they kidnapped her and had her way with her. The difference is that she was let go. For some reason, Junko was not let go, but every other victim they've ever had, they let go. January 4th, 1989. The boys made Junko play a game of Mahjong, a tile game. Junko saw this as a fit opportunity to reveal her more human side to the captors and hopefully allow them to see her emotional side and that she was human just like them, to have fun with them. She put on a fake smile and began to play the game with them. Little did she know this would cause her death. Junko was good at Mahjong. She was fond of it. So she won. And the boys did not see this in the way that Junko wanted them to see it. Once Junko won, they punished her by kicking her, punching her, dripping hot wax on her eyelids, and made her drink her own pee. They also beat her with an iron bar and wiped her feet with a bamboo stick. I'm gonna pull up a picture of a bamboo stick. You may think wiping someone's feet with a bamboo stick really isn't anything serious, but it is one of the worst forms of torture. After this, Junko started convulsing again. This torture lasted for 2 hours. All of Junko's old wounds reopened, and the boys knew that she was going to bleed all over the house. They didn't want that. They put plastic on their hands and continued to beat her. During all of this, she felt every single thing. After 2 hours of this torture, she was unresponsive, and the boys thought she was kidding or playing a game, so they beat her more. Junko was not playing. She passed away. They thought she was playing for a full day until that they realized she actually was dead. Hiroshi called his older brother to help dispose of her body. They wrapped her in several blankets and put her in a travel bag. They put her inside of a 55-gallon drum and filled it with wet concrete. They waited for the concrete to dry and disposed of the drum in a cement truck. At this point, no one was really looking for Junko because, as I said before, they told Junko to call her family and to let them know that she was just at a friend's house. Nothing was suspicious. So the family thought she was safe, but 3 weeks later, that all changed. This story, this crime, would have never been found out by the public, or at least not this soon, if the captors were not idiots. On January 23rd, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Ogura were arrested for the assault of the 19-year-old girl, the one that they released before. The police brought both boys in for questioning, and they were questioned separately. The police had information about a double murder that was not even related to Junko's case. They knew nothing about Junko. This was not about Junko, nothing related to her. They thought she was perfectly fine at someone's house. At this point, the police had no idea Junko was missing or dead at all. The police implied that Hiroshi had murdered these people, and Hiroshi slipped up. He said yes, they had killed Junko Furuta, and he could tell them where her body was. The police were dumbfounded. They didn't know Junko was dead, like I said before many times, and they weren't even talking about him murdering her. They were talking about another double murder he committed, because he committed murders almost daily. And he accidentally let it slip out because he thought they were talking about Junko, that he did indeed murder Junko. And he even told them where her body was. The next day, the police did find the drum, and Junko, after she was taken out of the cement drum, was so unrecognizable that she had to be identified by her fingerprints. Not even her parents could identify her when she was pulled out of the drum. The aftermath of this crime is not even close to a happy ending for anybody. Miyano Hoshori, Joe Ogura, Shinji Minato, and Yasui were the 4 arrested in this case. They were all under 18 at the time of the crime, and at first their identities were hidden, until a Japanese magazine took the truth into their old hands, and they believed that their names should be leaked if they were able to commit such a horrendous crime. And they revealed their names, addresses, and what they looked like. In July 1990, the boys took plea deals. Miyano Hoshori was sentenced to 17 years in prison. He appealed his conviction, and his sentence was upheld and 3 years were added. His family also had to sell their family home to pay Junko's family for compensation. They paid 50 million yen, which converts into something around 425,000 US dollars. I just want to clarify, for everything that he did, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. That's it. You would think that after all this, and after all this came to light in court, and after all this was quote-unquote settled, that the parents of the killers and monsters would say sorry to Junko Furuta's parents and give their deepest condolences. It wouldn't do much, but it would bring some sort of peace that the parents really do care. That's not the case. Ogura's mother, one of the torturer's mothers, allegedly vandalized Junko Furuta's grave by spitting on it. After she did this terrible act, she stated that the dead girl had ruined her son's life, which I was absolutely furious at after reading this case. It made no sense to me, and this shows that the parents are just as bad as the kids in this situation, and you could see where the kids got their morals from. This is the end of Junko Furuta's case. All the killers are free men to this day and are living a perfectly normal life with no repercussions of what they did to Junko. Some of them have even been reported bragging in bars and parties and clubs about things that they did to Junko, and that they were happy that they did it and that they'll continue to do it to other girls. I don't think we'll see peace or justice from this case. Unfortunately, this is how the world works sometimes. And I wasn't able to sleep after many days after reading about this case. And I wish you all the best. Thank you for tuning in for the video. And I'll see you in the next one. Toodaloo.